Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ, and of course, welcome to Third Pillar Thursday. A Third Pillar Thursday, for those who do not know, represents the third pillar of gaming, with the first and second pillars for tabletop gaming represent combat and social interactions, respectively. Now, on this channel, I am kind of a self-appointed third pillarist. I love using the environment and using the exploration pillar, and I kind of think of it like, because I'm I'm a complete movie fanatic as well. It's like picking the proper location to film your great movie. And so in tabletop games, I translate that as being the absolute most memorable proper place to have experiences with your players and your big baddies and your setting. And so this week we've been talking about plants, living things, the flora in relation to the fauna. And plants has a long history in tabletop role-playing games, far more intricate than we would even tend to think of, mainly because plants tend to be, for good or bad, they tend to fall into the background. And for pillarist like myself, this actually is a perfect place to put them into the background. So, again, using the exploration pillar, the third pillar of gaming, for me, it's using the environment, using the background, and having it represent something mechanical in nature, and also allows you as the game master, dungeon master, to yeah, or like Dead Man says at Twitch, says, or bring them to the foreground. Yeah, Dead Man. The idea that I often make an analogy of placing your players next to a green screen, in terms of you could describe an environment, but if it has no mechanical effect, if it doesn't induce tension or pressure, or make changes to the tactical choices the players have, or really influence players' choices for good or bad, and neither for or against them, but being this neutral party, then you could pretty much describe anything in the background, but it'll have no effect. 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons pretty much defaults to difficult terrain. There are some things you can find in and around that's scattered throughout the rules. I've found many of them, but they are scattered throughout the rules. There are a lot of spell effects. There are some creatures, so on and so forth. But plants, the great thing about plants is that they really do represent a great collection of what I consider to be the environment, in terms of representing layers, obstacles, traps, hazards, and riddles, puzzles, and all of that combined together. Plants that don't move very much absolutely do represent traps. Sure, you may see them undulating around and wanting to grab you. Sure, they may surprise the unwitting party members that try to make camp next to them. They could represent living things that both animal intelligence and socialized sentient creatures use in defense of their particular haven or hunting grounds and whatnot. They can also represent puzzles and riddles, in terms of needing or players wanting to find certain remedies or skills, or maybe even wives' tales on how to navigate around particularly deadly, or maybe even just resource draining plant life. And of course, they are monsters, or they can be monsters in and of themselves, whether they are mobile or not. And so, you also, when it comes to exploration allows the players to explore your setting and find out information about your setting. And plants tend to do that, right? Dead bodies and the environment that the plants live in also tells a lot about rainfall and weather patterns, and gives clues as to certain types of herbs or seeds or roots or leaves or sap or bark or and all of that type of stuff that the players may be able to use in order to navigate whatever landscape that you have, including the plants. Now, of course, the 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 very easy thing to add into, say, a third pillar type of exploration thing is to have the players have to navigate through dangerous plants, man-eating plants that cannot get up and move, treants that have decided to take a few centuries and sit here, but reach out for the players, whether they are mushrooms spewing out spores or vines reaching down or across the ground or something to reach for the player characters, or tree limbs or things of that nature. Maybe even, heck, bushes that spew out poisonous darts or something of that nature. Yes, those are excellent manners to use, excellent types of creatures, and or reskinned traps, or reskinned magical effects that you can place as plants in and around your environment, and have the PCs have to navigate around them. Now, I think, yep. Oh, there we go. Planescape and Razorvine. Yeah, I believe a material plane version of that is the less dangerous, but still, well, less. Relatively dangerous is the assassin vine, I believe. I think there's also an hangman's tree, but as was listed yesterday, and there are a ton of plant-like creatures. Tesla says the planescape razorvine, which mostly is on the lower planes, but eagerly acclimates anywhere. Its stem is a living razor wire, growing, twisted, and under tension, and thus lashing around if cut. See, yeah, that's pretty nasty. Hey, Caius, what's going on? Some try to use it as a security measure, but it's a virulent weed and hard to eradicate. See, and that's the thing that I like about using plants, because they could very easily it can very easily be a default for a not very bright, say, humanoid type of adversary, because even without them moving the plants around, living in an area where those plants can defend them and their haven, especially if they have a way to navigate around, say, something like razor wire, maybe again using burning some type of foliage that releases a smoke or a scent or something that causes the plants to react, back away from them or something, or holding up some kind of divine image, or holding out some kind of heck, even being scared of like battle axes because they're afraid of getting their roots cut or something. They may want to lean back away from whatever's going past them, and so that could be a great way for some of your humanoids to hide in a haven. Now, Caius brings up the fact that roots that grip and trip. Yeah, oh yeah, got to get those slips, trips, and falls. That's an OSHA thing. Here's workplace safety. Yeah. Caius also goes on to say, I like the idea of a buried roper. Yep, that shoots vines up through the earth and drags its prey under. You cannot attack it directly without digging it up. And I was going to bring that up there, Caius. Yeah, the idea that you aren't limited to having everything on the same plane. Living plants that, say, reach down for you or reach up out of the ground, which, strangely enough, we do have a number of creatures that have the ability to burrow and dig, but they don't really give you rules on a creature that is either submerged or subterranean, that's using it as cover to reach up to grab unwitting or unsuspecting individuals down into a subterranean location. You could very easily use cover, the half cover, 3/4 cover, full cover rules to hide the creatures and just allow their limbs to be attacked by themselves. Whoa, something on my face. Sorry. Igaris is a fungus from the abyss which was accidentally introduced on a prime world, and after discovering that it grows everywhere and that they can't kill it, the natives kick it out to the quasi-plane of vacuum, and it survives there. Ooh. Ugh. Igaris, or Igaris, quietly destroys, as in disintegrates, all sorts of stuff around when it can find anything. Uh, yeah, it destroys. Yeah, like kudzu. Yep. Tesla says, you've got kudzu? The Soviet Union will one up you with giant hogweed, also known as Stalin's revenge. Yes, in the southern portions of the United States, we have kudzu. This thing is just as easy to grow, and its sap is a potent, insidious, slow-acting poison causing burns like mustard gas. It can kill kids who don't know better and tamper with it. It's also 15 feet tall and grows in massive growths of hazardous shrubbery, like some toxic alien jungle. You have to wear a hazmat suit if you want to clear a patch of this plant monster. And that's native. I'm using the word mundane to separate ourselves from fantasy. That's just a mundane plant. Turn the volume up to 11 in a fantasy world, or hell, you might not even have to do that. It's a great thing. Yep. Kaya says full cover until exposed. This makes them immune to everything. Also, it might pulling. Let's say a person gets grappled and dragged down under or into the roots. Maybe the person grappled is the earth itself places the players and the plant and the victim on either side of, say, like three-quarters cover or half cover. When unless you're maybe only the roots exposed become subject to attacks or something like that. Putting under full cover, I think, would be a little bit of that's a little bit, quite a bit unfair. There it is, giant hogweed. Looks pretty, like, it doesn't look too bad. I've seen that around. And you're just like, hell no. Which is another thing about exploration, right? Exploration gives you knowledge, and collecting that knowledge together may really affect the tactics of what the players do. For example, you could very easily have plants. All right, think about a number of our senses and our actions when it comes to plants, right? Sometimes it's just a matter of, like, don't touch it, like the poisonous toxic sap on giant hogweed, not wanting to get any close to razor wire, being in proximity to screechers that screech and yell out loud, small fronds or giant mushrooms that if you get close they spew out some kind of pollen or spores or something like that. Kais is like, I don't mind unfair. Yeah, especially if you tell the players, like, hey, you want to attack a creature behind full cover, you're gonna have to go behind full cover as well, which really has its own dangers, right? Like, plants can reach out from or reach people that are, like, submerged in a swamp, let's say, or in an aquatic world. PC gets yanked off of sailing ship and gets pulled down by some kind of dangerous seaweed, or not seaweed, but you get what I'm saying. Pulled down inside of, like, some kind of coral reef. The danger is not just getting grappled and pulled down. The danger is suffocating underground, like, say a roper styled creature, or a plant changed, an aboleth reskinned plant creature, or something of that nature, getting pulled down underground, and then the chances of suffocating. The same would go for anybody being pulled down, being submerged, right? It's not just being attacked by an alligator or a shark that's the danger. It's being attacked by them in the water, in the murky depths of a deep, swampy lake or pool or something like that. Yeah, there are aquatic shambling mounds. Yep, absolutely. Hell yeah. Yeah. Guys are dead man talking about still talking about hogweed. In New Zealand, hogweed is also sometimes called wild parsnip. Or wild rhubarb. That's giving it a very mild, not too dangerous name for something that's pretty terrible, but yep. No, I saw you, Caius. Yeah, the shambling mounds. There's a lot of. Not only are there a lot of plant creatures, there's a lot of creatures that you can reskin as plants. Now, again, the idea that not only are the plants dangerous, whether you're touching them, whether you're in proximity of them, they can also be a danger to many other things. For example, the idea of moving slowly or being silent or trying to be as careful when moving around them to prevent them from activating. Again, being in proximity of the classic shrieker or any kind of plant that spews out spores or reaches towards something that is like warm bodies or sound, could be activated by body heat, movement, sound, magic, the casting of magic, or any number of those things, especially if you want to make the plant, say, blind without any kind of vision. There's also the idea that plants may have a detrimental or allergic effect on the player characters beyond straight hit point damage. I'm a huge proponent of attacking, causing harm, having dangers that affect other vectors to PCs beyond straight up hit point damage. Mainly because if the only method of success and failure is measured through hit points, then the only people who will basically have any means of success or failure are those who either are resistant to losing hit points or causing hit point damage, which means that it eliminates creativity and thinking outside the box. An example would be those same spores, other than, say, causing poison damage, could cause paralysis, unconsciousness, incapacitation. I'm going to call you Mew, and hello there, Mew. They could also cause things such as allergic reactions to, say, the nervous system, causing losses in statistics, such as weakness for loss of strength, neurological allergic reaction for loss of dexterity, affecting the lungs and endurance for losses in constitution, so on and so forth, right? Including down to charisma, causing nasty pus-filled bumps or hives or something to break out on someone, which might affect charisma. You can also some of the harm that can be done by these plants could come from different vectors as well, whether it causes the throat to clench up and the glands to enlarge, forcing people to become mute and unable to verbalize or speak, which would absolutely affect spell casting as well as communicating with others, which might be a great attack by some of these plants in and around the region, i.e., if you cannot yell out or roar or speak, you're pretty easy to attack. Mew Mew says, I like the idea of representing allergic reactions as stat damage. Exactly. Whether, temporary stat loss isn't a bad thing. It might require a very slight mathematical computation on the part of players and or game masters. But the thing is that because it is a vector that is not often used, I believe, much like myself that loves using the third pillar of gaming as its own hazard or as a tactical barrier or obstacle when it comes to having attacks with adversaries and enemies. The same can be done for attacking people through different vectors. For example, going mute, blindness, deafness, using how do I say this? Having losses in not just statistics, but losses in other areas, or temporarily not having access to something. For example, if a player character is hypnotized or begins having hallucinations, or hell, their eyes just start to water and they have a very difficult time seeing, i.e., disadvantage on seeing things at range or whatnot. A lot of these things can compound with the PCs, and especially if they are Again, attacking some kind of adversary, whether you have your prototypical goblinoid bandits or raiders or armies or scouts or something, and be you know me, there are a lot of people who feel like the what is it, the shove maneuver or knockdown maneuver, whatever, in fifth edition is useless. And my contention is it is if there's nothing to push or shove you into or over into. Along with using plants, we have the environment that the plants are in. They don't have to be on a flat plane. Much like much like Kai has brought up the idea of underground ropers, you can also get pushed down into a pit with some dangerous plants down there. You can get pushed into a ravine. Heck, you can get pushed into the reach of the vines from that man-eating plant. And so maybe there's just a narrow path to navigate through, but getting pushed, shoved, knocked over, being afflicted with blindness and stumbling into the wrong area, or heck, not being able to stand side by side in a narrow place where you know that there's dangerous foliage on either side of you, or even underneath you, or coming down from above. Again, makes you want to change tactics, rethink maybe some of the very plain tactics that are used when the environment itself may be dangerous. Mew says, also don't forget you can also use these plants with unique effects for PCs to make poison using them. Oh yeah, we were talking about that Monday, Tuesday, and yesterday, meaning that the exploring the region you can find many things. And listen, far beyond poisons, you can come up with, you could probably make a list of 20 different types of poisonous effects. Yeah, Dead Man says we talked about it mostly Tuesday. Yeah, you can come up with so many more effects other than just straight up poisons. You can come up with things that heal. Literally, you could probably make an excuse to mimic just about every potion, and probably 24 spell effects by things gathered in a plant-filled region, as well as probably another dozen or so magical items that are neither potions or scrolls and things. Right? I mean, people have been using the skills of herbalism and apothecaries and alchemy using plant matter even till today, right? Lots of our medicines come from using those things. And so not only could they affect people's biology and be used as poisons or to heal them from certain things, they can also have some other effects. For example, who's to say that there isn't some form of material that you can find that can allow you to change your shape or breathe out fire, or have a temporary resistance or immunity to some kind of outside affliction or whatever. Heck, Marine Boy had gum, who maybe there's some kind of like sap or something that you can use. And also, it might not be that you can just grab it off of a tree or grab it out the ground, using the bark as armor, using the roots as something, but maybe you have to have some process to get it to where you need it. Drying it out, turning it into a powder, smoking it and smelling the smoke like an incense, steeping it, making it like a stew, any number of things, right? And so again, like we mentioned on Tuesday, you could very much reskin, reflavor your typical magical items as these things. Now there might be some things that are very useful against plants. Salting the ground might be very effective. Fire probably has a really great effect as well in terms of getting the plants to maneuver away from you. And we may not know, or the players may have to discover what it is that the plants want, right? The plants may not just randomly be attacking things near them. Normally, if they are attacking something and they're part of the natural environment, they want to attack it because it's a food source. Now, of course, killing humanoids and growing larger and feeding the nutrients, using the decomposition as nutrients for its root systems and stuff makes a lot of sense. Just like biological flesh-eating plants do that very often, right? We have flesh-eating plants that draw in like flies or something, or wasps and such, because of the smell of the nectar. There's Venus flytrap. You get inside of the sweet selling mouth, it closes shut on top of you, and you start to become digested. There's also using that method, maybe say a very large man-eating plant stops attacking the PCs if one of the PCs gets swallowed down inside of it, which would make a lot of sense, right? And that could very well be used against enemies. Maybe a PC pushes one of those goblinoids towards that man-eating plant. Man-eating plant reaches down, snatches up the goblinoid by the head, starts swallowing it, and then that plant stops attacking everyone, or that specific plant stops attacking everyone. So it's not just a matter of making the environment hazardous to the PCs, but making it consistent and giving it verisimilitude in your world. Plants just randomly attacking people is one thing, but if it has a purpose for doing so, maybe the PCs are like, oh, that's what, yeah, I get it. Maybe we can use it for our advantage. And then, again, the environment should be used and abused. Mew Mew says it could also have some other play. If a druid's in a party, being able to find the motivations of plants by talking to them. Exactly. And again, the plants might have this is weird to say, there might be a plant-like network, so that plants may be able to communicate with each other over extremely long distances to maybe find out information by using the plants to speak to them. Now, again, this may not be an instant. This doesn't need to be an instant. What do you call it? Like, they gain all the information, because plants tend to not be very. You can claim that they're not very intelligent. That they form all of their information around being a plant-like being. So they may not even understand the difference between, say, a field mouse, a rabbit, a bird, or a human. Right? They may not understand that, but they sure do understand wet and dry weather. They sure do understand light and darkness, and they may understand feeding habits for themselves, how to gather nutrients, be it in the soil or living things that are going past them. And so they might frame a conversation based on themselves. For example, they probably have zero idea how to measure time the way, say, humanoids do. Right? We might measure it by hour by hour, week by week, month by month, and year by year. And they might only be like, I have no idea what you're talking about there, dude. But I know last season there was a whole lot of biologics that walked past. Ooh, like, what does that mean? I don't know. Lich doesn't affect me. But again, talking about plants from the outer planes. Plants have and will continue to live in various environments. Many of them may have elements from those particular environments. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be, quote unquote, a wooded region. That wooded region can be diseased. That wooded region could be suffering some kind of miasma or necrotic spell, or maybe it's just maybe there's some kind of parasite that's eating away at the bark and leaves, or maybe it's just due to famine in terms of the not having very many nutrients from rain and the soil, or things of that nature. It could also be the opposite. Maybe there's something causing an extreme outgrowth of the plant life and causing it to move into the humanoid settlements and such. I mean, we talked about on World Building Wednesday that the idea could be that, what we would consider to be a normally safe traveled pathway may very easily become overgrown within a week or something of that nature. So, yeah. Deadman says, in real life, many plants communicate at the speed of scent, like the acacia tree sends out an odor. Yep, that triggers a fight effect which causes the leaves to become poisonous. Absolutely, I absolutely agree with that. And and listen, the PC who's like, well, I'm just going to use a fireball, might come to find out that the pyromancer in the group is causing the other plants for miles around to have a very extremely detrimental effect on the party. And then when when the druid figures this out and looks at their party member, pyromancer's like, sorry, there are many plants that you might not even want to harm in a classic, hacking at it manner, because like a dandelion not mutates, but transforms from its yellow dandelionishness to being just having a head of pollen, it's possible that if you attack a creature, it does some other kind of effect, like releasing spores, or has a poisonous kind of membrane on it, or has a very adhesive sap, or releases some kind of like liquid like aloe, but it's acidic or poisonous, or causes a paralytic or something. So it could also be, you could also start stacking the dangers. You guys know I use, for the cinematic environments, I use an if-then series, right? Along with pressure as well. And if-thens, I love using if-thens because an if-then mechanic means that you put the hazard in the hands of the players. Meaning, if the players do a particular thing, then something else will happen. And if they learn the if-then, it doesn't make it any less dangerous, right? It's like saying it's the equivalent of choosing to walk through a field of landmines. If you walk through the field of landmines, then there's a hazard of setting one off. It doesn't make it any less dangerous whether you know it's there or not. And the same can be done for plants, right? Kaya says the humongous fungus in Oregon is one living organism that is 2,400 years old and covers 3.4 square miles. If animated, that could be epic. Yeah. Kaya says, I like injury equaling new problem. Yeah, and I like putting it in the hands of the players, too. Give them the choice. It's the classic rope bridge idea, right? Here's a giant rope bridge. It's, I don't know, 100 meters long or something. You go across it. You decide whether you want to go across the rope bridge and how you do it, and whether it can hold weight, whether you want more than one PC on it, whether you run across it or walk very slowly, whether you're being attacked from either side and what kind of tactics you use, whether on the rope bridge or trying to guide your enemy onto the rope bridge itself and cutting it or burning it or falling down into whatever's dangerous beneath it or something. All those things should be it's creating a problem but not creating the solutions. And again, using plants as our basis, because that's what we're talking about, it very much could become a thing. Now, I'm going to bring up some other hazards that are I think would be pretty common without the plants necessarily being exotic, that I think could very much affect playstyle. For example, the density of the foliage, I feel like you can layer some of the hazards because of the density of the foliage, meaning not just yeah, Dead Man puts into the Discord I'm gonna hell, I'm gonna butcher it anyway. The Armillaria astoye, army, it could be armillaria, in a double L being the Y sound in like Spanish or something. Armillaria astoye, humongous fungus, one big creature, which making a very large plant-like creature one big creature is a great way to do the mass, to pull out the house rule of having multiple enemies as one big mass. Meaning, like, we talked about this before on another show about having, like, say, an army of orcs and then just combining all their hit points together. And so that the PCs, let's say they all have 10 hit points apiece, and a PC does 30 points of damage with some kind of blast, then those 30 points mean they kill 3 enemies, right? Same thing can be done for a plant-like creature, where a treant, an aboleth, an ooze, any of your plants, you could combine half a dozen, a few hundred, a couple thousand altogether, making them one creature. They just happen to be, you can just attack them because each little spore, or I'm sorry, not spore, spur off of this big, large creature represents itself, say, one treant or one troll or one thing. Oh, here we go with the pronunciation again. Quit it. just because Google says that's how it's pronounced does not mean that is the standardization of how a thing is pronounced. You guys know that using Siri, Google, Cortana, etc. Often mispronounces the things, and we're like, wait, that doesn't sound right, because there are proper names versus the real pronunciation. Anyway, the idea, and listen, I'm not going to stop the show just to do that. I'll never do that. The idea that the plants themselves are not just on a flat plane. You can use them in above and below, whether it means the PCs have the ability to climb into, say, a canopy of limbs or trees, or they are growing on the sides of like cliffs or ravines or things of that nature, as well as adding in other weather effects, fog, torrential rain, thunderstorms. There are lots of rainforests that are rainforests because of the constant rains and such. Also, the density of foliage can affect things more than just difficult terrain. It could reduce sight lines, meaning that if the PCs are away from each other, there are lots of spell-like effects that require you to see your enemy or ally, your adversary or your friend, and that might be difficult, especially if you're being attacked by, say, an army of goblinoids. You may not be able to count how many there are because of how dense the foliage is. There's also benefits to hiding and sneaking around. There might be disadvantages on ranged attacks with a capital D, or there might literally be cover. You could layer cover based on distances away from each other. So the archer in the group wants to shoot at certain enemies, and maybe 30 feet away it's half cover, and then another 60 feet away it's 3/4 cover, and way beyond that is full cover, because you just can't aim your arrow through the dense foliage. It could have disadvantages or even completely neutralize, say, opportunity attacks, as well as maybe even having limitations on using very large reach weapons. Although you could make the case that, say, a claw or a vine or a tentacle or something could reach around corners, but say like a halberd or a spear or a pike, lance may not be able to be used in a very densely foliaged location. Also, there's also the idea that, along with many of the plants that we have in the in our monster manuals, you guys, all of you guys, Caius, Deadman, Tesla, Mew have already brought up in this little dissertation that there's a lot of real life plants that you could pull from that are pretty hideously dangerous, that could very easily be transported over into your fantasy, hell, modern or even sci-fi world, and just give it some statistics. Now, of course, those plants wouldn't have initiatives and things of that nature, but again, walking through a field of those dangerous flowers, or having to hack and push your way through a particular region, could have its own drawbacks. Hacking through plants could release some of the liquid inside of it, causing some kinds of allergic reactions. Using fire and burning through certain types of foliage could release some of the spores that will not only cause its own damage, but communicate with other plants for self-defense. And again, using the environment. What a great way for the environment to be used as its own lair for some of your big bads, hags. Oh, what's a really good one? Thinking of hags, doppelgangers, rakshasa, naga, heck, wizards, anything out in the woods that you want to make as one or many of your big bads out there, fey creatures, and they could have them set up or in league, using them, of course, surrounding their havens, in and around their havens, especially if you have a tribal folk that use the plants to defend themselves when they go running away from the PCs, and the PCs go running after them. Maybe they're doing it on purpose. More than just kobolds will use their environment to their greatest effect. And there are some natural monsters and animals that use the environment to their greatest effect, even though they can't communicate with the foliage itself. I'm looking at you, say, alligators barely float, piercing the surface just using their eyes and nostrils to go after their prey. They do that on purpose, right? It's not them consciously deciding to use the swamps as their lair, but it is instinctual for them to do that. And so the same could be done here. Now, we love to have ourselves world tree ideas, right? The community that lives inside the canopy of one tree or a very large location, and that represents its own problems, right? You have yourself height, balance, the idea of finding what some community that's up in the trees. How many elven communities have carved out the trees or reshaped them while the trees are still alive, while they live up in and inside of them. The same can be done for a third pillar world as well. And so having some kind of conflict, maybe the wood elves are being attacked by, again, those prototypical goblinoids, and maybe those attacks are happening now, and so they're being attacked by, I don't know, pterodactyl mounted goblins, or kobolds riding on the backs of bats at night or something, flying through the tree cover and whatnot. And of course you have yourself. You got to have your catwalks, your bridges, your ledges, your platforms, with or without handrails, because that's just a trope. But I mean, I'm joking with that. But yeah, having the fear of doing flybys maybe and being knocked over, or shooting someone with an arrow and having that enemy fall over the edge dead. And again, the PCs might be worried about the fact that maybe there's very little places to dodge as you're running across maybe some of those rope bridges that connect this community. Despite being possibly hundreds of feet in the air, there could be limited distances to fall, because you may fall down on other platforms, tree limbs, giant leaves, vines, etc., etc. And so, again, someone fails a dex save or an athletics check or an acrobatics check or something to hold on. When they fall, maybe you use a random die. Maybe a die 6 really works really well. You could have a standardized fall, maybe 30 feet to a platform well below. So on and so forth. You could have a randomized table of what happens if someone were to fall, such as knocking their head on a outreached limb, getting tangled in vines, being captured in the cup of a giant leaf, or anything of that nature. And again, like I said, adding in weather effects. Weather effects to me are some of my go-to favorites, like fog, downpours of rain, high winds. Those things can have a very detrimental effect as well if the PCs are well up in the canopy of they don't have to be in the canopy of a city in the trees, but it works pretty good as well to do these kind of things, with the fog limiting sight distances, or enemies using it to their advantage, or hell, even the PCs who must sneak into this realm within the trees. Maybe they use the fog as cover to sneak their way, climb their way up, and sneak their way into a community that is trying to keep themselves very safe. Also, the idea of creating tension and tension timers are a favorite of mine, in terms of as the environment starts to become affected by either the PC's actions, the enemy's actions, or the weather itself, some of the plants might become more dangerous. For example, as the sun rises, maybe the fronds of those very beautiful but very dangerous flowers open up, and the opening of those flowers could present its own danger, as maybe the plants naturally start releasing some pollen, or they start releasing pollen based on movement near them, and that could become very have an allergic reaction that way. There's also the idea of, say, flood waters filling certain regions with water, and then that reduces maybe some of the drier areas that the PCs were navigating through, and it starts reducing the safest places to walk, pushing the PCs ever closer to something dangerous as some of those low-lying regions start to fill with floodwaters, as well as maybe there's just this is part of a natural seasonal change where much like when fall comes about and the leaves start to change colors and the plants start to die, this is their like animals getting ready to hibernate. Maybe they're far more aggressive to gain some nutrients as the roots hunker down for the winter, for the coming fall and winter, or maybe they are more lethargic at these very moments, and the lethargy makes them easier to navigate, but they're also starting to drop their heavy leaves and foliage and bark and such. And so maybe even an obstacle can very much be fallen trees and a dead wood, and those fallen trees can represent cover for and against the PCs, especially if there's adversaries hiding behind them. And of course, you have yourself difficult terrain trying to navigate around a wood that's filled with nothing but dead trees and exposed roots and things of that nature. Also, there's let's not forget that since plants can grow very large and have an extreme reach to them, that their limbs, their vines, their roots might have a reach that's far beyond attacking the main trunk of, say, a very large tree-sized mega tree or something. So it's possible for the PCs to have to decide, much like, say, reskinning a hydra, do I attack the roots, and knowing that if I attack the roots, there're just going to be more roots without attacking the main body? Or do I attack the main body, knowing that if I don't attack the roots still represent a danger to myself and the party? Again, putting those choices into the hands of the players really makes it more like a puzzle in order to figure out what their tactics they're going to use, and again, creating problems but not creating the solutions to those problems. So yeah, I myself absolutely positively love using the environment, and I love the idea of using plants as well. Now, the plants themselves, again, don't need to be non-sentient. They could be quite intelligent. We have a lot of them at our disposal, and there's lots of monsters you can reskin. I brought up the aboleth as an example to reskin it as a planted-like creature. Doppelgangers really fit really well as like an invasion of the body snatchers kind of thing, where the unsuspecting gets grabbed and snatched into a plant, and then that plant then spews out of one of its fronds or seeds or something like that, an exact duplicate of the individual. Could be pretty naked, covered in like nasty goo. Maybe the person that's killed, maybe they put in their clothing and grab their items or something. And then a great way to have the origin of, say, a doppelganger, and the very origins of many other creatures as well. I brought up reskinning trolls as a plant-like creature. Makes a whole hell of a lot of sense as well. And so you could have a thing where the PCs may have to, maybe the most direct path is to travel through this dark animated wood, and they need to try to navigate through it not just physically but socially, trying to make friends with the Vegapygmies, or come to some kind of like diplomatic agreement with the Myconids, or make friends with the Treants or whatever, or not even make friends, but to barter with them and say, hey, listen, we have something that would benefit you, like, I don't know, something that's hell, a magic item makes them fire resistant or something would be a pretty damn uh, valuable trade in order for the PCs to say get from one end of a wooded area to another. And there's no reason why all the plants need to be on the same page all at the same time, right? Plants, again, was brought up yesterday, I believe, with a war, a in eclipse phase. There is an exoplanet where there is a an ongoing war with one plant species against another. The same thing could be done in this instance. For example, guys brought up the kudzu and the not the humongous fungus, the giant hogweed, you know, rhubarb, really. Anyway, a plant-like war could be happening underneath the noses of humanity, and with the humanoids being like, I really don't see the difference. But there are many plant species that try to choke out the other plant species, and the PCs might get pulled into this multifaceted war of sorts. And so befriending one species might make them enemies of another species, as well as the idea that the PCs might even carry on their backpacks or on their skin certain types of like pollen or spores that for the plants represent some kind of communication that the PCs may not upfront understand. Much like much like graffiti and gang signs, right? Carrying certain types of scent on the body. There are many, for example, there are many predators that mark their territories. The same could be done for plant life, and the PCs may come to find out like, well, I know there's like a lot of pollen and it's making me sneeze, but what's the big deal? And the plants are like, you have you carry the mark of our enemies or something. And the PCs are like, what mark? And then come to find out as they blow the pollen off of their shoulders or something, and they're like, well, ooh, I didn't realize that. Ugh, we're going to have to clean ourselves. And, a simple cantrip could do that for them. Culturally, if you really want to have something different in your world, culturally, there's also the idea that certain characters come from a culture in which what they create, like their spell effects, their knowledge, their skills, allow them to do a thing that embodies the location they come from. So, for example, a character that comes from a jungle region filled with a lot of these plants may have their spell effects represent that. So if they create, say, food and water, it might only create the plants and or the water and plants that they normally consume from the region that they are. And I believe this has already been introduced in other. It was already introduced in other editions of Dungeons and Dragons, but there's no reason why you can't use it here as well, just for narrative effect. The same goes for choices for, say, druids and things. I know a lot of druids want to pick the T-Rex just because it happens to have the best stats, but you might want to, if someone has a very good reason for it, someone might say, hey, instead of picking animals, could I transform into plant-like creatures? And a very easy rendition to do that would just be, oh, well, we'll just make a list of plants you can change into with the same CR levels and things. Yeah, why not? Why the hell not? It makes perfect sense. So exchanging that for some players, as well as, again, reskinning, reflavoring, reusing so many other character classes that could fit into a foliage filled world. And then when they're in those regions, they can use those environments to their best effect. Rangers hiding up in the high limbs of a tree. I don't know, rogues making ghillie suits that when they pull the cloak over their head, they just look like fallen dead foliage on the ground. Maybe even having if you are afraid of giving magic items away that are too powerful, you could also reskin, reflavor, and reuse them as maybe they have a time limit, much like things spoil. Maybe they have you can harvest some leaves or bark or sap or seeds or a nectar or roots or something from the local trees, but maybe they have a time limit for freshness, much like a leaf, a pulled flower or leaf will start dying once it is pulled from its from the plant. Those things may have a limited shelf life. Thank you very much there, Dead Man. By the way, guys, just as it is promoted below this video, you can follow on Twitch. I would really appreciate you guys, especially you newbies out there, following me on Twitch. The more followers I have, the greater chance I have to become an affiliate, thereby making this channel ever more professionally accessible to you guys out there. I hope I am able to give some professionalism as well. Also, please like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and come over and join the Discord as well. If you do not know, this show is simulcast on Twitch, YouTube, and the audio gets punched out to Discord, so you can actually participate in the show using all three platforms if you wish. I don't ask that you have to do it that way, but some of you have a greater opportunity, a greater interaction with one or more of them. I believe it reaches the goal if you become a follower. You start following on Twitch. Yes, it does help reach that goal. I'm not sure how the specific rules, whether you must specifically watch on Twitch, although that does help because the in our space of social interactions, social media, interaction itself is of value, both monetarily and through algorithms. So the more people that interact, that take part, that comment for good or bad or what have you, it actually has value in the sphere. So yeah, that is why so many people ask for calls to action, because it does have a value. It's not just a matter of having subscribers, but posting comments, using the like features, heck, on YouTube with super chats, on Twitch with people that follow along there and become create greater affiliation. So yeah, it's just how the sausage is made. That's all. Yeah, and Dead Man says the average viewers helps, but pretty sure he's far beyond what is needed. Yeah, I could probably show you guys that, but not at this moment. But anyway, since we have come to the end and we are powering down, I do want to let you know that tomorrow, this show goes live Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But tomorrow itself is Future Friday, and if you have any interest in, say, The Expanse, Altered Carbon, the Eclipse Phase RPG, or just transhumanism in general to bring to the tabletop community, or into your tabletop games for science fiction, please join in for Future Friday. It's one of my passions, and we will be talking about augmented reality tomorrow. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Of course, we always got to talk about the ugly. So anyway, guys, thank you very, very, very much for joining me. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. Guys, I will see you later. Have a great one. Bye. Ooh, my video paused. Sorry about that. See ya.